something. I hope I learn something. I hope I learn something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days. I hope you learn something. I hope you learn something. I hope you learn something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days. We learn something. I hope we learn something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to the daily All Hat No Kettle News Rodeo. I'm your host, Hat. A hat that did not sleep more than a couple hours last night and had one of the worst gaming days this morning that I have ever had. And I had to do it in front of people too, so great. And things just went downhill from there, but we're here. I'm going to do my best to give you a good show as always. We've got a lot of different stuff today. Some interesting international news, including a recent released interview with the Iranian foreign minister, being interviewed by an economist for a oral history of Iran, who was thinking he was talking off the record, but somehow the recording of the conversation got released to an Iranian outlet in London known as Persian News Services, I believe. I believe that is a revolution outlet. I mean, not revolution. What's what I'm looking for? Sorry. Again, today, opposition source, and the New York Times picked it up, and some interesting things in there, including something that John Kerry told the Iranians that maybe he shouldn't have said. But who are we to judge? An interesting story about in the after show about the Supreme Court looking to take up a case regarding issuing concealed carry licenses in New York. I think they're going to take that up the next term, according to the article. And I have a fascinating story to end the after show. Science fiction has come this much closer to reality, folks. 2024 may see something really, really big, and I'll get to that. First, I want to show you something. If I can figure out how to bring it up, give me just a second. I realized at the last minute that I did not do this properly. Let's see. Just do a display capture here. Here we go. Got it. This is my new hat rack. It came Saturday. I found some time yesterday to put it up with Picasso Nose's expert help as always. As you can see, it is a full 4 hat rack. So now I have a hat for every day of the week, excluding Friday. And of course, Fridays are the custom 46 asterisk hat that I'm trying to show you, but I don't have a camera pulled up. So we're set. Now I no longer have to run around the house grabbing a hat at the last minute. I just turn on my chair, stand up, grab a hat, sit down, boom, we're ready to go. It is quite nice. I really love it. The pegs, the brackets are rubberized metal. No, they're not rubberized. I'm sorry. They just look that way. But they're powder coated, very smooth, no sharp edges at all, and it looks great. It looks great. I really love it. Very easy to put up too. So let's get on with the show. Let me close this real quickly so it's not in the way. And first up, of course, our first Babylon Bee bookend. This is the one on the left. This I picked up just about a minute before SRS 4859 in the YouTube chat told me about goings-on today at the Portland and or Seattle airport. There was some protests. I should say, something was posted this morning on Andy No's Twitter account. And he says there were events inside the airport, courtesy of gangs and BLM. You guys know I don't show riot porn on the channel. If I do have some extra time, I'll try to search for it, see what I can find up, get a description of it. I didn't see any mention of it, though, on the Daily Wire, the Epoch Times, or on Dan Bongino's site. That's why I didn't know about it. And those are my main news sources every day. But if I do have some time, I'll try to crack down on it. But as if SRS 4859 knew exactly what I was going to start with, here we are from the Babylon Bee's U.S. section. Portland mayor announces plans to crack down on Antifa before it gets out of hand. And here we have a picture of the feckless Ted Wheeler and a beautiful shot of downtown Portland on a balmy evening. Well, at least it may be balmy. It certainly is as you stand next to the car fires that are raging in the street. Dateline Portland, Oregon. In a startling press conference this week, Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler announced he will be cracking down on Antifa rioters before things get out of hand and they start doing some real damage. Wheeler, quote, "This Antifa group is starting to worry me," he said while standing in front of the smoldering remains of downtown Portland. "I think it's time to start arresting these people before they take to the streets and start damaging property and terrorizing people. If we don't do something soon, it might get ugly." Close quote. Reporters pressed Wheeler to explain why he had taken the side of fascists, considering Antifa means anti-fascist, which means anyone who opposes them is a fascist. Wheeler said, "Yes, this is a disturbing thought. It bothers me to consider that I may be a fascist now. I think the answer is to oppose Antifa with our cherished progressive values like love, tolerance, and diversity. And gulags." Close quote. Wheeler has asked Biden to send in National Guard troops as well, but his request was denied since Antifa is just an idea. And we know that because 46 asterisk told us that during the debate. So let's move along. First, our look at the market. Recently closed, and the Dow Jones closed below the magic 44,000 mark yet again, down just under 0.2% today, closing at 33,981 and change. As you can see, it was pretty much a down day from the start. It was briefly above 34,000, and it just marched its way down, 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 and down. So the market was only up for a brief period of time today. The S&P 500 did finish up the exact inverse of the Dow Jones, and the Nasdaq finished up almost a full percent, actually, closing well above the 14,000 mark at 14,138 and change. Gold had a mini increase, flirting with $1,800 an ounce. Crude oil dropped. It is below $62 a barrel now for West Texas Intermediate sweet crude. And Bitcoin had a resurgence today, rising a full 11.3%. It is now flirting with the 54,000 mark after being down in the high 40s for a while last week after the tax plan was announced where they would start putting capital gains taxes on cryptocurrencies. And the bottom fell out of the Bitcoin market at that very moment. But we'll see what happens. And good afternoon, dog. Nice to see you. Thanks for the great gifts. Okay. Democrats behaving badly. I haven't had a chance to use that phrase in quite a while. I think really because they're just always behaving badly. And so there was no way to single anything out as being noteworthy. It just was a constant drumbeat of them behaving like anarchist jerks. But this popped up last week, and now we have some footage to show. Michigan State Representative Jewel Jones. Jewel is a guy, just so you know. Jewel is a guy. And Jewel was arrested for drunk driving. Although initially they rolled up because he had been swerving across traffic on a busy road and then swerved into a ditch. So the cops rolled up and Jones became combative. He refused to comply with simple orders like producing his driver's license. So they took him out of the car and he decided to fight. He got tased twice. He got pepper sprayed before they finally got him out of there. But what's interesting is what Jones had to say while he was fighting along in the ditch along I-96. There's video, but the audio is really muffled. I'll play the part where he's on the ground with the officers. I'll fast forward to that. But let me give you some ideas of what went on here. Okay, you got the officer. You can see here in the picture the bald officer, and he's asking Jones for his ID and driver's license over and over again. And there's an officer behind Jones who is keeping track of him. And Jones is saying, "Take your hands off me. I'll give you my stuff. Take your hands off me. I got you." Then Jones says, "Can I get my phone?" The officer says, "No." And Jones says, "Okay, then I'm not going to give you anything." And then they go to the ground. They tase him twice. They pepper spray him. They're constantly yelling at him to stop resisting. And he's saying that he will, and then he doesn't. And then he says this: "I run y'all's budget, bro." And he continued, "I'm being abused by an effing police officer. I'm black." By the way, one of those officers was black. "When I call Gretchen, I'll need y'all IDs and badge numbers, everything." Gretchen, of course, referring to the Wicked Witch of the North, Gretchen Whitmer. He also said, while in the police cruiser, that the officers should call the director of the Michigan State Police. His name is Colonel Joseph Gasper. And quoting Jones, "Tell Joe who you got and call effing Joe. I'm not sure he's up or not. If he's not up, wake him up. Tell Joe who you have. Tell Joe who you have handcuffed." Jones reportedly had a blood alcohol content of 0.19%. As we all know, the legal limit pretty much across the country is 0.08%. So that is twice the limit plus. And he had a gun in his cup holder. It's a heck of a cup holder. It's either a small gun or a big cup holder. And he's facing charges including resisting and obstructing, operating a motor vehicle with a high blood alcohol content, operating a motor vehicle while intoxicated, possession of a weapon under the influence of alcohol, and reckless driving. By the way, in case you were wondering, Jones is an auxiliary police officer with the Inkster Police Department. I have no idea where Inkster is, but I have a feeling his badge didn't do him any good. So let me see if I can find the part where they go to the ground here.
I already asked your driver's license.
Let me pause it. Fast forward here. Sorry, let me mute it while I'm forwarding it. Yeah, here we go. Let me back it up just a bit. Here we go.
You're not gonna be able to get it. You're not gonna be.
Stop resisting. Stop. Stop resisting.
You're not gonna be able to get it. But I'm telling you, if you do that, that's not gonna be good.
Stop.
It's not gonna be good for you. I'm telling you.
Stop.
Bro, I run y'all budget, bro. I'm chilling. I just want to talk to y'all. I won't move. I won't go nowhere. I just want to talk to you.
We got this one. Give me your right. Give me your left arm.
I just want to talk to you, bro.
We're going to. As soon as you stop resisting.
Oh, let go of my arm.
Left arm, you're gonna get taken.
I don't like this because
Give us your left arm.
Bro.
Stop resisting.
Bro, I've been abused by the police so much because I'm black. When I call Gretchen.
So yeah, that was a thing, folks. That was a thing. Your tax dollars, if you're a Michigan resident, at work, and I expect to see Jones filing charges left and right. This ought to get really, really ugly. Of course, he has not resigned from his position in the state assembly just yet. In fact, his lawyer is saying that Jones deserves his day in court. I seem to remember a certain case recently where we were told because it was on video, there wasn't a need for a trial. Let's see how well that works. All right. Now this is beautiful. I'm going to read this story in full. I'm the letter in full. What am I referencing? There's an officer out of LAPD known as Deon Joseph. Now, not being someone who follows LAPD stuff regularly, I did not know that Deon Joseph is actually kind of a local hero. He's been very instrumental in the LAPD outreach to Skid Row. And for those of you who are thinking, which Skid Row? Well, this is the original Skid Row. That Skid Row was the first real downtrodden area of LA, and that's how all these districts all over the country became called Skid Rows colloquially. They're named after the real one in LA. And Officer Jones has been reaching out to that community for quite some time, and he's made a name for himself. So what's going on now? Well, let me back up a little bit. Last week, you remember, there was the shooting in Columbus, where Micaiah Walker was about to stab another girl to death. I should say to death, but about to stab another girl, possibly mortally wounding her with a knife. And at the very last moment, a Columbus PD officer fired 4 shots into Walker, and she ultimately died. The other girl, however, was unharmed. And even people as far left as Val Demings. Remember Val Demings being one of the lead mouthpieces for the Democrats during the first impeachment trial? Val Demings came out and said, and I'm quoting, "It looks like the officer responded in accordance with his training." Not exactly a blanket endorsement. She's still leaving a tiny window open, saying that perhaps the training is at fault. But she did at least give him that much, that he reverted to his training. That's all I could expect out of a Democrat, and then some. Now, I don't know Officer Joseph's political leanings, but he went after, in a very nice way, LeBron James. Because after that shooting, LeBron James doxed, basically, the officer involved in that shooting and put underneath a picture of him, in all caps, "You're next!" Exclamation point, and then with an hourglass symbol to the side. What many, many, many saw as an obvious threat, and LeBron James got ratioed to death. He deleted the tweet, but instead of apologizing for it, he said, "I'm only deleting it because y'all are using it to spread hate. Y'all take our words and use it to make more hate." Well, you're the one who started the hate, dude. So let's kind of look at that. But Officer Joseph is taking the high road, and I think this is a beautiful, beautiful act on his part. And I am humbled by his Christian charity. I do not have it in my heart to be as kind and generous as Officer Joseph is. So let me read you the letter that he wrote to LeBron James. This is quite something. "Dear LeBron, I am not going to come at you from a place of hatred. There will be no name-calling. I was raised to see the whole of a human being, not to hyper-focus on their flaws or make said flaws the whole of who they are. I'm an honest man. What you do for children and other acts of charity shows a huge heart. You show to be a family man, and that's to be respected. You play for the team my family has cheered for since the 1960s, then myself since 1979. But your current stance on policing is so off base and extreme. Your tweet that targeted a police officer in Ohio who saved a young woman's life was irresponsible and disturbing. It showed a complete lack of understanding of the challenge of our job in the heat of the moment. You basically put a target on the back of a human being who had to make a split decision to save a life from a deadly attack. A decision I know he and many others wish they never had to make, especially when it involves someone so young. Instead of apologizing, you deflected. You said you took your tweet down because you did not want it to be used for hate, when the tweet itself was the embodiment of hatred rooted in a lack of understanding of the danger of the situation. I don't know if this will ever reach you, but my hope is that one day I can sit down with you and talk. As a man of faith, I can have no hatred toward you, but I do feel I can help you understand the reality of the profession of policing and that there is another side you need to hear. You are tired of black folks dying? So am I. You hate racism and police brutality? So do I. But you cannot paint 800,000 men and women who are of all races, faiths, sexual orientations, and are also mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, preachers, coaches, community members, and just human with such a broad and destructive brush. Unlike some who have dug their heels in the belief that police are inherently evil, I think if you yourself actually sat down and had a real, honest, and open conversation with a cop, there's a strong chance you may discover we are not the monsters you have come to believe we are, who deserve the hate and disdain you have. And even if you come away feeling the same way, I could respect it because at least you gave the other side your ear instead of only hearing one narrative. The offer is on the table, LeBron. No cameras, no fanfare, just two men who care talking. I know it's a long shot, but this division and hatred must stop. It's clear based on rising crime in marginalized communities that cops and the community need to build bridges to save lives on all sides. That cannot be done through the demonization of any group of people. Just putting it out in the universe, brother. Even if not me, please take the time to talk to a police officer instead of judging them. No shade. Thanks for all the positive things you do. That's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. By the way, in case you're listening and not looking, Officer Dion Joseph is black. He's coming from a place of love, you guys. He really is. I think that's an incredibly beautiful Christian thing to do. And I'm very touched. I hope something comes of it. I really do. I really do. It would be an absolute travesty for LeBron James not to reciprocate in kind and take a moment to listen to someone who obviously cares about the whole community, not just one side or the other. So let's pray. That, by the way, this article brought to us by the Daily Wire, written by Ryan Saavedra, of course. So something else good happened recently, and believe it or not, it was during the Oscars. I've heard stories about how insane the Oscar speeches were last night from certain people. There was some guy, I don't know who he is, who went on about how cops kill 3 people every day, and there's never any justification for it. Blah 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 blah. Obviously not knowing anything about what's going on, as if every shooting is a deliberate murder with no justification whatsoever. It's just cops hunting people. So narrative. But one person actually stepped up and said something positive, and that was Tyler Perry. Now, I don't know Tyler Perry at all. I understand he makes movies. I guess he's got a TV show out there, Big Mama's something or whatever. Okay, fine. It's those movies aren't meant for me, and I don't care. They do very well. And they've done well enough where Tyler Perry got a special award last night. It's the Gene Herschelt Humanitarian Award. But he said something very beautiful. He references, before the part of the clip that I play, how his mom grew up in the Jim Crow South. And I believe he even said he was born in the Jim Crow South, although he seems to be rather young, so maybe that's not the case. He looks to be a little younger than I am. But be that as it may, he tells the story about how his mom, as a child, was mourning the death of Emmett Till. You remember the young black man who was accused, falsely, by a white woman of sexually harassing her, and he was dragged out of his house and lynched. and that became a cause célèbre, and it really kicked off, in many ways, the civil rights movement. But Perry tells the story also of one day his mom came home from work early, and she worked at a Jewish community center, a JCC, and she took care of toddlers at that place. And she came home early, and Tyler Perry said, "Why are you home?" And she said, "Someone called in a bomb threat, so we had to evacuate." And his mom was devastated that someone would do that to such a beautiful place. So Tyler Perry sees the Chauvin trial, the Chauvin verdict, as being proper, and he believes that what we need is police reform. But he's saying that, and I quote, "Lately I've been very, very concerned that the message is being hijacked by some other groups or political ads and parties that are trying to stop the message of what we're asking for here, which is police reform, right? So yeah, I was, but I'm worried now because of what I'm seeing." All right, so now, Perry is not all peaches and cream. He did call the new Georgia law, Bill 202, he called it Jim Crow. Fine, not everyone's perfect. But let me play the part of Perry that really struck home with me. Let me blow it up here. Here we go.
My mother taught me to refuse hate. She taught me to refuse blanket judgment. And in this time, and with all of the internet and social media and algorithms and everything that wants us to think a certain way, the 24-hour news cycle, it is my hope that all of us would teach our kids, and not only to remember, just refuse hate. Don't hate anybody. I refuse to hate someone because they are Mexican or because they are black or white or LBGTQ. I refuse to hate someone because they are a police officer. I refuse to hate someone because they are Asian. I would hope that we would refuse hate. And I want to take this Jean Hersel Humanitarian Award and dedicate it to anyone who wants to stand in the middle, no matter what's around the walls, stand in the middle, because that's where healing happens. That's where conversation happens. That's where change happens. It happens in the middle. So anyone who wants to meet me in the middle, to refuse hate, to refuse blanket judgment, and to help lift someone's feet off the ground, this one is for you too. God bless you, and thank you, Academy. I appreciate it. Thank you. When I set out to help
sorry about that. That was beautiful. That was absolutely beautiful. By the way, real quickly, where he referenced at the end there, pick someone's feet off the ground. I'm going to cry a little bit when I tell the story. It's quite beautiful. One of his earlier productions, they had rented a space in L.A., and he went outside and caught out of the corner of his eye someone who he realized right away was homeless. He clocked it, and it was a woman. And he said, "I prejudged her. I reached in my pocket, started to grab some money, and she said, 'Do you have shoes?' And she wasn't wearing any shoes. Now, I guess Perry at one time was homeless. And he describes in this video that the pair of shoes that he did have, the heels were all basically broken off. And that was all that he had. So he immediately felt for the woman. He took her inside to the space and into the wardrobe department. And they stood in the middle of all these clothes, swaths of fabric, etc. And they picked out shoes until they found a pair that worked for her. And she said, "Thank you, Jesus, my feet are off the ground." So he did that for somebody. So again, his politics aside, his ability to judge election law aside, he is obviously a very strong man in his faith, and in some ways a very humble man. So God bless you, sir. God bless you. Every now and then we get to do something nice here, Every now and then we get to do something nice. But then I have to switch gears and talk about Facebook. One constant theme on this show is censorship. I wish it wasn't the case, but it always comes up. And the latest is Facebook's attempt to crush the Babylon Bee. In fact, that's quoting Christian Toto's article here from the Dan Bongino website, bongino.com, will Facebook's war against conservatives crush the Babylon Bee? And as you may know, the Babylon Bee started out as the Christian right-wing answer to The Onion. The Onion has gone completely left, and it's just not as good as it used to be by far. Once you go woke, nothing's as good as it used to be. And a little while, I shouldn't say a little while ago, one of the first big pieces of news about the Babylon Bee was when they ran a piece that showed a very large washing machine, and it said the title was that CNN had bought industrial-sized washing machines to spin their news. And Snopes fact-checked that. And that just started the Babylon Bee down the road of being constantly attacked by the woke left. Facebook is constantly demonetizing them or restricting their page on the most hilariously stupid technicalities. But unfortunately, they're stupid to us, but it's deadly serious for the Babylon Bee because they make a lot of money from their Facebook pages. And whenever that revenue stream gets turned off, they're basically solely relying on subscription fees. Very proud to say that Picasso Knows and I are our Babylon Bee subscribers. Have been for, about a month now, I think. I finally bit the bullet and started subscribing to the Babylon Bee. By the way, my Post-Millennial and Epoch Times subscriptions both went, both timed out this week. I should say last week. And Epoch Times last week and Post-Millennial today. So I renewed those. I had no idea it'd been a whole year. But, so, the Bee is being held to some insane standard. And here's where things really kicked off. Last October, Facebook snapped into action over an article riffing on a classic Monty Python sketch. Here's the title from the Babylon Bee. Senator Hirono demands ACB be weighed against a duck to see if she's a witch. So the famous Monty Python bit from the Holy Grail, where they're trying to determine if a woman's a witch, and of course, if witches float, and what else floats? Wood, and what else floats? Ducks. And so if a witch weighs as much as a duck, then if a person weighs as much of a duck, then she's a witch. And as it turned out, in case you haven't seen the movie, she did in fact weigh as much as a duck, so she was a witch. That's neither here nor there. So, Facebook said that incited violence. Never mind that then Judge Coney Barrett was being attacked from all sides for just being a mom, a Catholic, and a conservative. 3 horrible things according to the left. But that headline supposedly created violence, according to Facebook. And now they're doing it again. And I'll quote the Bee's editor-in-chief, Kyle Mann. He tweeted this. Facebook has cited us for coordinating harm and promoting crime. And that's because the Bee wrote an article that had a few tips on looting and rioting. And let me read 2 of them. Have a buddy. Those new 4K TVs are freaking heavy, man. Missing the comma in between heavy and man, by the way. And then the second one, stay safe, but also throw bricks at police. And Facebook has increased their level of restriction. They're now on restricted monetization, and they're getting turned off left and right. Now, of course, if you're Rose City Antifa, your Facebook page is alive and well. Because there's a difference between satire and an idea. And as I said, SRS 4859 has said in the YouTube chat that there is some really interesting video shot inside one of the airports that I referenced earlier of basically rioting. But this is so sad that I have to comment on things like this. But I can't let it get swept under the rug. These are all trying times, and we have to support our voices as much as we can, even a silly voice like the Babylon Bee. In fact, one of the Babylon Bee's recent headlines is, Facebook bans the Babylon Bee for being too accurate. How often have we read a Babylon Bee headline and then just a few weeks later it turns out to be true? So, I would ask you to pray for the Babylon Bee, but what I would really like you to do is subscribe to it. They have a few subscription levels, but if you can't subscribe to it, send them a couple bucks whenever you can, because I start and end every show with them, and I just I can't think of doing it any other way. So if you can, please do. You know, I'd never ask you to do something that I haven't done myself. All right, into some current political news. The Purple Unicorn, Senator Joe Manchin, Democrat, West Virginia, is at it again in a good way. In a good way. He said last week that he's not for the huge, insane, quote-unquote, infrastructure plan, the $2.25 trillion infrastructure plan, and that's just what's up front. If you look at all the spending that they're proposing in this behemoth, it comes up to something like 4 or 6 trillion over time. It's absolutely mammoth and well outside the bounds of reality. The Republicans have proposed a much smaller package, somewhere around, I believe, $800 billion, that would go directly towards, water lines, roads, bridges, airports, and 5G. They're considering the broadband network part of the infrastructure, which I think is very, very forward-thinking and only right, until the Republicans are saying, look, we can pare back a lot of this and do it just on the infrastructure that we need, as opposed to spending billions and billions of dollars on child care or schools that are already sitting on $100 billion that they haven't spent and are awaiting another $200 billion over the next 5 years. And yet the Democrats want to carve out another several $100 billion package for public schools. All as a complete stop to the teachers' unions, of course. And they're also trying to basically unionize childcare. Speaking of unions, the Democrats also want to end the ability of a state to have a right-to-work law. The Democrats want to make it mandatory that you join a union in order to have a job. Oh, you're welcome, JF. You're very welcome. But Manchin has said on several occasions that he wants these things to go through the Senate with bipartisan support. He's not in favor of necessarily using the reconciliation process every time the Democrats want to ram some kind of a budget package through the Senate. Now, he did go for the American Recovery Act, or whatever they called that boondoggle, that $2 trillion boondoggle, was it a month, 6 weeks ago? But he's saying he's going to hold up any attempt to push through this infrastructure package as it's written. He wants bipartisan support, and he's more than willing to back what his Republican colleagues have put out there. So we can only help. We can only help. Pardon me, we can only hope. And again, he's against ending the filibuster. So, but can you count on him? I just don't know. All right, this story warmed my heart. I got an archive here today from ABC News yesterday. There was a poll, an ABC News Washington Post poll. ABC News Washington Post. So not exactly a far-right poll. This is the kind of poll that you would expect to lean as far left as possible, given their politics and what they want to achieve in life, which is to support Democrats at every opportunity, even if it means twisting the truth into a pretzel. But turns out this didn't go so well for this current administration. 46 asterisk. percentage approve of the job he's doing as president. 52%. Percent disapprove, 42%. Now you're going to say, well, 52%, that's above water. I mean, he's 10 points above water, approve versus disapprove. And Trump's first 100 days, this is, by the way, his first 100 days. Trump's first 100 days, Trump was 42 approve, 53 disapprove. So Trump was completely underwater. But if you go back further in the record, you'll see that there's only a couple other instances where you had a president in their first 100 days who had a lower approval rating than what 46 asterisk does right now. And one of them was Gerald Ford. You remember Ford took over for Nixon. He was never elected president. He ran in, was it 76, but he lost to Jimmy Carter. And Ford, during his first 100 days, had an approval rating of 48%, but a disapproval of only 32%. I mean, Carter, his first 100 days, he had an approval rating of 63% and a disapproval rating of only 18%. So that doesn't look all that great for 46 asterisk. And to compound these numbers, I like to quote Ben Shapiro from his show earlier today. That 52% is basically the margin of voters that Biden got in 2020. Honk honk. You remember, if you spread out the votes between the swing states that he won, honk honk, it came out to just a little over 44,000 votes. Not exactly a mandate. So if you look at that 52%, as Ben Shapiro put it, he's got nowhere to go but down. The Republicans are not complimentary towards Biden's performance so far, while Democrats have him pegged at 90% favorable right now. But it's the middle, again, like I've been saying so often, it's the middle where the rubber really hits the road, and Biden is underwater with the liberals. Pardon me, with the middle, with the independents. Right now, he's about 48% approval with the middle. So not good for him. Not good for him. He's got nowhere to go but down. And remember, the bloom is coming off the lily where it comes to the Chinese Communist Party virus. Things have been on autopilot, and now the vaccination rates are slowing down. More and more people have been vaccinated, so the initial rush is over. And as I reported last week, there are places that are actually throwing away doses because they're not getting enough people coming in to use them after they take them out of cold storage. And the administration paused the J&J jab, causing confidence in it to plummet. And the border is just getting worse and worse and worse. I've got something on that, a couple things on that I should say in the after show. So moving right along. Actually, I think there was one other thing I wanted to cover here. Yeah, here we go. Here we go. I did want to cover this. I almost forgot. Approve of the way Biden is handling the pandemic, 64%, the economy, 52%, and the immigration at the border, 37%. And the support for his recent announcements, 65% supported the relief package, the American Recovery Act, 58% approve of raising the corporate tax rate, which shows that there are a lot of people who don't know anything about the economy, but only 52% support the infrastructure plan as it's currently being put out there. So again, hardly a mandate. This is really cool. I've been waiting to hear about the census, and we're finally getting some numbers. The official numbers from the 2020 census aren't out yet. They've got to be transmitted to the White House. The White House gets first look at them, and then they slowly go out to the different agencies where the numbers are released to the public. But we've got some initial results that are showing, and I've got an article here from foxnews.com by Tyler Olson, that congressional seats are going to be shifting noticeably with this new census. Specifically, California and New York are going to be losing House representatives and possible electoral college vote. I shouldn't say that, not possible. They'll be losing House representatives and electoral college votes, because you remember the electoral college is the combination of your number of representatives and senators. So if you lose a representative, you lose an electoral vote. California is going to lose congressional seats for the first time ever. California became a state in 1850, and it has never lost a congressional seat until, looks like it's going to lose at least one, if not two, when the new numbers come out. And New York, again, same. Florida and Texas are the ones that are picking up seats. There are other areas that are going to gain. First, let me get to the losses. Alabama, Illinois, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and West Virginia. All of them could lose a representative. Alabama is right on the bubble. New York may lose as many as two. Gaining a House seat will be Arizona, Colorado, Montana, North Carolina, and Oregon. I'm very surprised that Oregon is actually gaining a seat. I don't know who's moving to Oregon. I guess it's California people buying houses out in the sticks. That's the only thing I can think of, because I can't think of anyone on this side of the country that would move to Oregon. I just can't. So it's got to be people that are already on the left coast. Now, the other thing to keep in mind here is redistricting, gerrymandering. If the 2022 midterms come off the way we're hoping, and Republicans gain even more ground in state houses, then those lines are going to be drawn for 2024. And that could make a huge difference in the election for all seats. So we'll have to see how this exactly goes. But it is interesting. Now, one real quick part here. Montana and Rhode Island, I love this part of the article. They have each just over 1 million population. But right now, Rhode Island gets 2 reps, and Montana only gets 1. But if the census turns out the way these projections are, then it's going to flip. That'll be interesting. That'll be interesting. All right. One of the states I just referenced, New York, the story that will not die, and I never want it to die, is the Cuomo killing fields. New cover-up allegations are being proposed as the state, specifically Cuomo, are refusing FOIA requests for nursing home death numbers. We've gotten the numbers from I almost said Kim Fox, that's the Chicago DA. We've gotten the numbers from Letitia James, the New York AG, but those weren't official numbers. Those were based on representations and some real numbers. The actual numbers are still being held by the state, and we don't have all those. A number of organizations have been filing FOIA requests, and New York is saying we can't release them yet because of privacy concerns. They've been saying that for a year now. It may not literally a year, perhaps 11 months. But they have been saying that continuously. We can't give you all the information because of privacy concerns. Just give us a little more time and we'll have the numbers for you. How often have we heard that? How often have I reported that to you? Time and time again. So we don't know. We don't know. It still isn't out there yet. I mean, they're under federal investigation for cooking the books when the feds were looking into their nursing home death numbers last year. And then there's all the state scandals associated with that, plus the sexual harassment scandals. So, but he's digging in his heels. All right, some international news, and then we'll finish up with YouTube. Going a little long here. I may have to clip through this. So let me just touch on this briefly. This is Tom Ozimek with Epoch Times. We have started withdrawing troops from Afghanistan. They are pulling out. We may wind up leaving some equipment behind for the Afghan military. We're going to take out as much as we can, but certain items and parts and other stores will be left behind for maintenance, things like that. But the troop withdrawal has been undergone. Also, that happened this weekend. You may know that 46 asterisk declared the Armenian loss of 1.5 million people at the hands of the Ottoman Turks back at the beginning of the 20th century, but referred to it as a genocide. The first time ever a U.S. president has referred to those killings as a genocide. Now that made the Armenians very happy. They're boom. Thank you, President Biden. That's great. You know, we finally got the recognition of this that we deserve. Turkey, meanwhile, is absolutely hacked off. Absolutely hacked off. Now, we've already been in touch with Turkey for a while now. We imposed sanctions on them last year when they bought the Russian S-400 anti-aircraft system, and that made us cancel our F-35 sales to them. Remember, Turkey's a NATO ally, supposedly, because we didn't want them to be able to go to school on the F-35's capabilities and let the Russians tune up the S-400 systems against that aircraft. So that canceled those sales. Also, Turkey's mad because we armed the Kurdish YPGs in Syria. And there's also a cleric that Turkey's accused of orchestrating a coup that they want extradited. So we're expecting harsh words from Turkey, but what can they really do is the thing. They can restrict access to Incirlik. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Ray, you were at Incirlik, right? Is Ray in the chat? I didn't see him. But that is a very, very important airbase in that region. We've been using that to stage airstrikes into Syria and Afghanistan and Iraq. And if we lost access to that base, or at least partial access, it would severely hinder our efforts to provide air assets in that region. So we'll have to see. But the Turks are not happy by this. About this, pardon me. So real quickly, I teased this earlier in great detail. The Iranian foreign minister, last name Zarif, and he had this conversation with an economist that was not supposed to be made public. There's an audio recording of this that has since been leaked, and the New York Times got a hold of some of the reporting on it. And there's some takeaways here from the audio. Former let me save that one for last. Zarif said the Revolutionary Guard Corps, also known as the Quds, were called the shots in Iran, overruling many government decisions and ignoring advice. Zarif also said that by assassinating Soleimani, the United States delivered a major blow to Iran, more damaging than if it had wiped out an entire city in an attack. The report also said that the Russian government was trying to work through Soleimani to scuttle the JCPOA back in 2015. The Russians didn't want the Iranians getting cozy with the West. The Russians wanted to keep their hegemony in Iran as much as they could. But that didn't wind up working out. But Soleimani was working with the Russians against the Iranian government in that behalf. Here's the part that caught me the most, though. Former Secretary of State John Kerry informed Zarif that Israel had attacked Iranian interests in Syria at least 200 times. To his astonishment, Zarif said. John Kerry, once again showing... Where's my camera? I just noticed my camera's not up. That's weird. Hang on just a second. That's been up the whole time. You guys, do you guys not watch? I've had the wrong screen up this entire time. Oh wait, no. I see what I just did. Never mind. Hang on. Okay, there we go. I had that display capture still open, and that was blanking out my camera. You can't see my new hat. Anyway, so yeah, John Kerry told Iran that Israel is behind at least 200 attacks on Iranian interests in Syria, and Zarif was surprised by that. Thanks, John Kerry. Nothing like trying to completely sabotage our only Democrat ally in the Middle East. Thanks so much. I've never, ever had anything nice to say about Democrats' positions on Israel, ever. And it's get worse and worse. All right, we already did that. Okay, we'll actually get out of YouTube on time. This is a very detailed article from the Epoch Times. I highly suggest you go there today to look for this. It's all about a trial and subsequent jailing of 4 Chinese doctors for illegally extracting the liver and, I believe, kidneys of a dead woman in the back of an ambulance some years ago. It seems that the woman was in the ICU after sustaining very serious injuries from an axe attack from her son-in-law. Yeah. Son-in-law went after her with an axe. She wound up in the ICU, and she started going into respiratory failure. The head of the ICU, according to this article, went to, I believe, the son of the woman and said, "We'll give you the equivalent of $20,000 for her organs." And so the son signed an organ donation certificate. Here's the thing, though. It's against the law to offer money for organs in China. Now, we know China has a huge black market on organs. We know they've been stealing them from Falun Gong members for decades, since at least 2000. But this is one of the few times there's been a spotlight on illegal organ extractions. People are saying that China's doing this to try and take the spotlight off of their supposed underground trade in illegal organs, and trying to use these guys as scapegoats. The other thing is they're not getting very much jail time. It's anywhere from 12 to 28 months. That's it. But as I understand it, all the appeals processes have been fully vetted and have been denied, so they're going to jail if they're not there already. But so that is it's an interesting sidelight. But again, I would check out the Epoch Times and look for the story. It is a very detailed story. I just don't have anywhere near the time to get into all of it. But there is that. All right, we have reached the end of a YouTube day. Thank you so much, SRS4859, for being in the chat. And again, I won't have time probably for the Andy No videos today, but I will certainly give them a look. And if I can, I will see what I can do about them tomorrow. I will say, though, and I just remembered this. I was going to say it at the beginning of the show. I'm probably not going to cover Portland anymore unless it's something really out there, like the National Guard's called in and sits on a riot, because rioting in Portland is passé. It's the status quo. Why waste time reporting on it when it's just the same thing over and over again? They act up, they burn down things, they break windows, they spray paint. Some people get arrested, they're released, and they're never charged in court. They just walk away and do it again the next night. It's a machine, and I'm tired of covering it. I just don't care anymore. So if Ted Wheeler calls in the Guard, or there's an actual trial and some people get sent to jail, prison, whichever, I'll do it. But until then, why bother? Why bother? All right, so YouTube, I'll see you tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget, Wednesday we will be covering the joint address to Congress by 46 Asterisk. I'm going to try and fact check him on my own during the speech, and then we'll have an after show where we'll discuss what went on, and I'll take questions and comments from the chat as we talk about it. I will cover the Republican response by Tim Scott the next day. I'm sorry, actually I'll have to wait till Friday, because Thursday I have another appointment with my oral surgeon. That'll be the last appointment before the surgery, it looks like. I tried to get it for Wednesday so I could take the day off like I had planned and then do the night show, but I can't get in Wednesday. I have to do it Thursday, or I've got to wait another week, and I've got to get this going. So, sorry, you guys. Sorry. Skullcram asked, when is Wheeler's re-election? It was last year, Scully. He won a re-election last year. He was running against an Antifa supporter. She's also an avowed Marxist, yeah, he won re-election last year, handily, if I might add, handily. All right, YouTube, thanks so much for being here. I'll see you. Bye bye. Let's see. Let us go to our news. Turn that off. Get my screen up. All right. First off, welcome Gab TV. Nice to see you. Please enjoy the second half of the show here. If you ever care to, you can catch the whole show live, 4 p.m. Eastern. The whole show will be on DLive and Trovo. I highly suggest DLive. The link to the DLive program is at the end of the video. If you also care to, you can get the DLive app for your phone, iPhone or Android. There's also an iPad app, and you can join us that way. The chat's great, and I can hand out microtransactions every so often. So it's fun. All right. I'm on the wrong page here. Here we go. First off, some good news about a tragic news. You guys remember I covered the story last week. A 7-year-old girl was in a car with her dad, 26-year-old man, and they were in drive-up at McDonald's. A car pulled up behind them. Guys jumped out and started spraying the car with bullets from all over. The police say they found at least 30 shell casings surrounding the car. The tinted windows were shot out. The man was hit in the upper torso and survived, but the little girl was struck several times in the chest, and she died very shortly after she was rushed to the hospital. And there has been an arrest. We have here 18-year-old Marion Lewis, and you can see here in this picture, this is a story from the Daily Wire, written by Amanda Prestigiacomo. And as you can see, Mr. Lewis has the unfortunate habit of getting face tats. I've never understood the concept of face tats. In fact, for that matter, I've never really understood tattoos for people, for colored people. I'm not going to use that term anymore. They don't show up well. They look dumb. Ever since I've seen NBA players with tats that look muddy and ill-defined, I've thought, what a waste of money. Why not just buy some vinyl stickers and put them on your arm? They'd look better. But anyway, poor Mr. Jones has these face tats, and he also has some 17 felony charges alongside of a first-degree murder charge hanging on him right now. There are 2 other suspects in the April 18th shooting, but we don't know if either of those are in custody at the moment, and they have not been charged at this point in time. But the little girl's name, please forgive me for not saying it outright, as Jacelyn Adams. Jacelyn Adams, little girl, and she's dead. The thing about the story that is quite sad is the reaction from Black Lives Matter, which was zero. As we all know, Black Lives Matter is quick to pick up on pieces of crap who get shot by the police, often because they did their best to get shot by police. Jacob Blake, I'm looking at you. Dante Wright, I'm looking at you. But not a peep about Jacelyn. Not a peep. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But, well, Lori Lightfoot made a statement on Twitter about this. But she couldn't go so far as to mention that it was black-on-black crime. Here's what Lightfoot tweeted. I am heartbroken and angered that a 7-year-old child was killed this afternoon on Chicago's west side. This unthinkable act of violence has no place here. The epidemic of gun violence cutting our children's lives short cannot go on. Okay. Don't you think it's important to mention it's a black child killed at the hands of a black man? Or black men? Obviously not. There's a great quote in here by someone named Rudy Rivera. Rudy's the CEO of Rochester's Father Lawrence Tracy Advocacy Center. And Rivera brought up in this article the killing of Daniel Prude. Pardon me. That was completely out of bounds. I apologize. The death of Daniel Prude. Daniel Prude died in police custody of what appears to be, by all accounts, excited delirium. I am so sorry I used that word. That is narrative bull, and it was wrong of me to say that. Please forgive me. But the video came out of Prude and riots. A number of nights of riots in Rochester. One poor woman was attacked with a 2x4 for the crime of standing out in front of her business. But Rivera had this question for the activists. When we kill ourselves, I say to myself, where are the protests lining the street? Where are the people within our own community who know what's going on here? And that's the most tragic part of this whole story. Everybody knows what's happening here, and yet it persists. Where are the voices of the activists who held press conferences nearly every day over officer-involved incidents? You would like to know. And that is a perfectly valid question to ask. Now, this story's breaking. I don't know much about it. Steve Crowder had some stuff on it on his show. I was watching it while I was putting this together this afternoon. There was a shooting in North Carolina, Elizabeth City specifically. And there was a black male who was shot by a 42-year-old black male shot by a police officer. And the mayor's office declared a state of emergency for the city as of this morning. I believe it kicked off 8 a.m. Eastern. It's a state of emergency. They're expecting civil unrest. And here's what we know. Brown died following the execution of a search warrant on April 21st, and witnesses have said that Brown was driving away from the scene at the time when deputies opened fire. Okay, that's all we know. I may have heard today, my memory's sketchy, again, I didn't sleep last night, but I believe I heard today that the warrant had something to do with a gun charge. I could be wrong. But I seem to remember hearing that it could have been gun related. Now, right now we just have witness account as to when the shooting occurred and to how the shooting occurred. We don't have any of the body cam footage yet. That hasn't been released yet. Now, of course, Benjamin Crump, the latest runner-up for Al Sharpton Race Hustler of the Century Award, is right there on the scene. Now, say what you will about Benjamin Crump being a crappy human being. He is a successful crappy human being. He wrung a $27 million settlement out of the city of Minneapolis for George Floyd's family. Meaning, of course, that Benjamin Crump probably got about 40% of that. That's close to $10 million. For one case. That buys a lot of private jet time. But he is on the scene, raising anger, raising tempers. So Elizabeth City's looking for unrest. Have to see what happens. I got nothing else to say. It's another sad situation that's being used by race hustlers to build up their bank accounts while not helping the community at all. Okay, so on the flip side of having a warrant out for you for gun charges, is wanting to legally carry a gun, especially concealed. As we now know, there are some 20-odd states, I think 27 states, that have concealed carry, constitutional carry, I should say, where you don't need a permit to carry concealed or to open carry in some states. Open carry is legal here in Wisconsin without a permit. There are other states with the same provision. Here you need a permit, a certificate, I believe they call it, for concealed carry. And mine expires in November, by the way. I've got to remember to start putting my dates together to get that renewed. But other states have very, very onerous rules regarding concealed carry. And one of them is New York. Very difficult to get a concealed carry permit in New York State. In New York City, it's even tougher. In New York City, in order to get one, you have to show that you are basically a special victim. My words, but it sums it up nicely. You have to show that you have a specific and present danger towards your person in order to be given a permit to conceal carry. So a couple of Second Amendment patriots in New York City filed a federal lawsuit against the city for violating their Second Amendment rights. And according to Jack Phillips from the Epoch Times, SCOTUS is taking it up. It's supposed to be looked at their next term. And hey, Deb Song, good afternoon. Good afternoon. So I don't know what's going to happen with this. This is one of the instances where you can say we have a constitutional leaning majority on the court, even if it's only 5-4. I would be very, very, let's just say, upset if I saw this SCOTUS with the current makeup not back the Second Amendment in an obvious case of infringement. The Supreme Court hasn't ruled on a Second Amendment case since, where was that? What was that? Heller versus D.C. So that 2008. Yeah, 2008. That was Heller versus D.C. So we're hoping. We're hoping. The NRA is, of course, behind it. They're hoping that this goes through. To quote New York State law, proper cause. Proper cause. The respondents, by the way, are Robert Nash and Brendan Koch, or Koch. It's K-O-C-H. Koch or Koch, I'm not sure. But, of course, Letitia James says that these laws are completely in keeping with all this and all that. So here's my point regarding having a specific need, due cause to carry a gun. And that would be New York City crime statistics. Here are the latest, comparing March of 2020 to last month. Murder, up 36%. Rape, up over 30%. Robbery, equal time, is down almost 12%. Felonious assault is up almost 1%. Burglary, interestingly enough, is down 8.5%. Grand larceny is up almost 5%. GLA, I do not know what that stands for, is up 35.5%. I tried looking it up. I could not find out what GLA stands for. But anyway, if you add all that up, even with the 11.8% drop in robberies and the 8.5% drop in burglaries, you're still looking at almost a 2.5% rise in total crime stats from March of 2020 to March of 2021. And we know that those stats were going up in March of 2020. So that's very sobering. Very sobering. And that's just New York City. All right, some state news. One in particular, another state has banned transgender athletes from competing in what I would call cross-sex sports. That's a term I just made up right now. And of course, what I mean by cross-sex is where you identify as a sex other than your birth sex, but you want to compete in the sex you identify as. And this law in Alabama, pardon me, Governor Kate Ivey signed it today, and that I know, or yesterday I should say, that article from GQ, GQ, I believe it's pronounced GQ, but Kay Ivey signed this bill into law where transgender student athletes cannot compete on K through 12 public school single-sex teams. So if you're a trans woman and you want to play in men's sports, you can't if there is already a girl sport for that, and vice versa. Grand Larceny Auto, thank you, Wheatmouth, thank you. Oh, YouTube's still on. Yeah, it is.